people say that housing is a privilege that you have to work for, I would just be like, why the hell am I alive? This is exhausting. If I have to continuously work for housing, work for healthcare, if I have to pay to play, pay to be alive, this is exhausting. I'm surprised that there isn't a deeper mental health crisis.
Yes. The recording's in progress.
Oh my goodness, that plant is adorable. What is it?
This is a purple waffle. There's a more technical name, but her name is Justice. Thank you.
It's a purple waffle named Justice. It's the most precious thing I've heard today. And I've been very emotional these last few days and 7 years.
Yeah.
And 5 more years before that.
Just like from the time I was born on.
Yeah. Like that joke that the therapist is like, so where did it begin? Where did these feelings start? And he was like, my existence. Hello, my friend.
Hello. How is it going? A lot has happened.
A lot has happened. Is this the 1 week marker of the Uvalde shooting?
Has it been a week?
I think it's only been a week.
That's crazy.
Like acknowledging the fact that this also happened in my home state, where it is one of the easiest places to get a gun. 19 children and 2 teachers were just brutally murdered. And the fact that the NRA held a convention in the same state not 3 days later.
Where they banned assault rifles. Yeah. It's been very heavy and very, very sad. And then definitely the shooting in Buffalo. It's been tough.
The shooting in Buffalo, which was clearly racially motivated, and they're like, maybe not, we're not sure. And the guy left a straight up manifesto. It
very clearly, I think the resistance to label it a hate crime, it in itself is very problematic.
I saw a chart earlier today that literally charted the amount of airtime on the news cycles that the Buffalo shooting got versus the Uvalde shooting versus the Sandy Hook shooting. So whenever the victims were primarily victims of color, way less airtime.
Interesting, including the Uvalde shooting that just happened. Wow. I remember seeing a tweet that Will Smith slapping Chris Rock got more showtime than the Buffalo shooting.
Yeah. Like the Buffalo shooting, like no one talks about it. How the guy literally targeted a grocery store. It blows my mind, literally, so much that in this country, like mass shootings is something that is very unique to this country because we have so many freaking guns.
Yeah, so many things, but certainly want to highlight that very white supremacist racist person went to a Black community and wreaked havoc, like intentionally did that. And it's true. We have more access to guns than any other country. This is something that, nobody else has to deal with. And we certainly don't want this to be the norm. We certainly don't want to become numb to this. So make sure you call your senators, sign petitions, get out, and all the protests that are happening or about to happen, be involved, because we do not, this has to end.
So something that actually happened before our time that I was not aware of because, well, how old was I in 2004? Like 3rd grade? Anyways, from 1992 to 2004, there was a ban on assault rifles, and it cut mass shootings down by like 43%.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that the Senate let that lapse, boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the argument that gun legislation doesn't work is invalid because we have proof that it did work. There was a time where we were protected.
There was proof that it did work, A. B, we have definitive proof that hiring more school quote unquote safety officers or police officers in the school has not stopped a single school shooting.
Mm-mm. Uvalde is a heavily policed community.
To this day, have not stopped a police shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Or have not stopped a mass shooting. Police in schools don't stop it.
No, the police are not the answer.
Literally, like everything that comes out more and more about this tragedy just makes me so upset. It like grips my insides and just like makes me feel so horrified constantly. And there were 2 more shootings this weekend. One in Philadelphia, and I think the other one was in Tennessee.
It is tough right now and that's a complete understatement of what it is.
And it was also the 2-year anniversary of George Floyd the same week. So not only are we thinking and trying to wrap our brains around how ineffective the police were in tragedies like the Uvalde shooting, but how they basically executed someone and have been executing people of color. Like it's the same side of it's 2 sides of the same coin.
The police are not the answer. They are not effective. Defund them. Please, for our lives.
It's so heavy. So much has been heavy. But in the midst of all this, we also want to try to talk about some very positive things going on in the world, because a lot of the conversations that we do have are very heavy and a lot of it's ranting about capitalism and whatnot. So we came up with this segment called Fangirl 5, where we are going to fangirl over amazing individuals of color for 5 minutes, and we get to pick who we are fangirling over. So, Kiara, who are you fangirling over right now?
I am currently fangirling over the women of the WNBA because in the midst of all this tragedy and trauma and heartbreak, they've been able to keep all of these things at the forefront. They are fighting for social justice issues, and they're also being them and just bringing me so much joy. For example, in their style, because they are, if you watch I'm forgetting like the name of it, but when they walk into their locker rooms, they're all like decked out and they look fantastic. Definitely want to highlight Brittany Griner has been unlawfully detained in Russia over 100 days now. And they've definitely done a good job keeping that in the forefront. But it's this interesting balance between talking about big issues, big social justice issues, and then still bringing joy. So definitely wanted to fangirl over them. What about you, Hannah?
My fangirl 5 today is Christian Cooper, who is getting his own birding series on National Geographic. I loved National Geographic as a kid, first of all, A. B, it is just such a joy to see that there is good in the universe. Because if you don't remember, Christian Cooper was a birder. Apparently that's their title.
Okay.
The birder. Or a bird watcher, I think. Yeah. And they were he was in Central Park when he asked a white woman to leash her dog, which dogs are not supposed to be off leash in Central Park, because the dog was scaring away the birds. And the white woman decided to call the police on Christian Cooper. And she weaponized her white tears and her white lady drama, I guess, to try to get him arrested, and was caught on camera. And it was just this whole thing where like white women's tears literally end up in the deaths of people. So weaponizing that is, she knew exactly what she was doing. But this is not about her. This is about Christian. So Christian was bringing the joy of birding to the forefront of everyone's attention. Once he was interviewed by like the New York Times and like New York Magazine and all of this amazing stuff. And that's another thing too that really inspired me about Christian Cooper is I don't picture people of color as birders. I don't picture people of color as being interested in nature. Why? Because all the documentaries are narrated by old white men.
Yes. Yes, that's a great point.
You think of scientists, you think of zoologists, you think of biologists, you think of oceanographers, and they're all like white people. And all the documentaries have British accents.
And so major shout out to Christian for changing the face of that, because there certainly are Black and brown people who are huge into birds. I would love to learn more about birds for one.
Oh yeah. Like that's just so exciting to me to be able to know that there's going to be a kid out there watching National Geographic, seeing someone that's passionate about birding, and they're going to be like, I want to do that one day because he's doing it. I'm gonna start crying.
It's just fantastic. It makes me happy when, I mean, I'm not a big fan of capitalism, but since we have to deal with capitalism, when people can have jobs like this where they actually really love it and can make an impact, that's really incredible.
Yeah, he's gonna inspire so many people. Like, he's inspired so many people to already just go out to Central Park and start looking at birds. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah, that's so wholesome.
Like, I can't inspire people to look at birds. I'd just be like, look at that thing. It's probably related to a pigeon. Pigeons are gross.
It would be limited, the knowledge. Yes.
Oh, yeah. But like, he's like a local celebrity now, and I just love it. So that was my fangirl 5. We love to see people of color just pursuing their dreams and bringing excellence and bringing the whole of humanity with them, honestly. Because let's be real, white people kind of drag me down sometimes.
It's certainly been very heavy, so it's really nice to, and especially because, I mean, I don't know if either of these facts were well known, so to really elevate and just like support other people of color is always really fun to do.
Exactly. And getting people interested, like people of color interested in things that aren't conventionally something for people of color.
Yeah.
Because like, where did birding start? I'm pretty sure it started like probably in England, just like staring at birds from like rich people that couldn't figure out like anything else to do with their lives. But now it's a fun hobby that everyone can enjoy.
Yes. It's just so wholesome. It reminds me of you and your plants. It's just so sweet.
Thank you so much. So like moving forward, I think that's just going to be a fun way to just start off the podcast and talk about current events that don't make us want to throw up.
We need more of that.
Exactly. So what chapters did we talk about this week? Are we talking about this week?
We read education and housing.
2 things we are very passionate about.
Yes, very much so. Did anything stand out to you in education?
Oh my gosh. Where are you? Education. So like, if you're listening to this, like, I will admit that we don't talk about like the very basics of like education justice, education rights, because I feel like the 2 of us with our education, our personal education, like we've gotten a lot of that, but like people who might be listening to this podcast might not know about like who funds schools, what were the busing policies? Might know like the basic about like desegregation in school, like Ruby Bridges, that story, that history, but I don't know if a lot of people know a ton about education policy now. So actually one of these people that I deeply admire, her name is Jo Lumen. She was on the school board for her children's school, and she had to resign because people were threatening her over a tweet and threatening to go shoot up the school. So she had to resign from her position in the school board.
Wow.
And she was a woman of color, for speaking her mind. Nothing that had to do with education or school or whatever, but a bunch of white supremacists got a hold of like her children's school information. So she had to resign.
Wow. That's so heartbreaking. That reminds me of what they tried to do with the Honorable Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, where they said that she was a producer of a kid's book about racism. She didn't write it.
I don't remember.
She was affiliated with a book, and they were trying to use that against her. It's like, oh my gosh, she co-signed this book about racism, and it ended up being one of the top hits.
Love to see it. Also, the huge like debates of the day about education, banning books, don't say gay bill in Florida, all of this stuff, when gun violence and school safety is such a huge part of that conversation, but they're banning literally everything except for freaking guns.
Yeah, the things that are actually killing, because books are enlightening, and don't say gay is just trying to erase a community that's already so marginalized, and it's so ignorant of a policy. But to actually like save lives, nothing about any type of gun control.
I think that's also just like what's so awesome about schools and education policy is that they can operate within their own little ecosystem. Like, you have healthcare, you have a school nurse. Like, my school had athletic trainers, so we had physical therapy there. Like, we Title I free and reduced school lunch programs. Like, it's a feeding program. It has everything. Like, public schools have everything but housing, pretty much.
It's kind of got to be that way, though, because they definitely have to recognize, well, first of all, you have kids there longer than they spend time with their parents. They're there for a majority of the day. And then also you have kids whose like primary needs aren't met at home. So at school, you got to provide food. You need to provide, I mean, counseling is dwindling, which we definitely will talk about, but you definitely need to provide like extracurricular activities or physical education. Those things have to be provided in order for it to be an inclusive education.
Their community centers, their music enrichment, their arts enrichment. Like, that's the beautiful thing about schools. And they have so much potential to just better our societies. And what do? We defund them. We underpay our teaching staff. We overcrowd them. And we turn it into a carceral system, basically, by adding police. Did I miss anything?
And and then at some point we decided that kids who misbehave, I think at like by third grade, are more likely to, is directly linked to prisons and how they're built. It could be this amazing thing. Education could be so fantastic, and yet there's so many limits right now.
Whenever we think of what happens in higher ed, and we know that higher ed is such a privilege for the few, like, if we could incorporate what is done for higher ed, it provides housing, there's food, but it's also a pay-to-play system.
Yeah.
In which capitalism, once again, ruins our lives.
Yeah, it's all just disappointing, honestly.
Like, I don't see how people can look at all of this and not see how it is connected.
Mm-hmm.
All of the aspects that we are talking about, that Kendall is writing about in this book, they're all connected within an organism of society.
Yes. I think one of the points that she talks about that I think is certainly interconnected is when she talks about the emphasis on obedience rather than, I don't know if she said obedience rather than education, but she definitely talks about like how teachers, one of the teachers of one of her kids tried to get him in trouble because he was like eating lunch in the library as opposed to the lunch area. And it's like, if a kid is in the library, what is the problem? But the emphasis was on obedience. Let's see. It is over education. So I think, and I mean, we see that all over the place in society. It's not necessarily about individual things. It's about someone's power and their need to keep it in check.
Did I tell you about the time that I got sent to the principal's office by my theater teacher?
You did, but tell it again, because I think that's a good example.
One time. Okay, I've been sent to the principal's 2 times in my life. Other than that, I was a goody two shoes, like pre-AP, AP, like honor roll kid. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But one time on Columbus Day, I refused to celebrate that day. Mm-hmm. I didn't know Indigenous Peoples Day was a thing yet. I don't know why I didn't draw 2 and 2 together, because my stupid 16-year-old brain didn't put 2 and 2 together. But I just screamed "white people suck" on Columbus Day in protest during a theater exercise. And honestly, they invited it because they were like, use your voice to project. So I used my voice to project. Next thing you know, I'm in the principal's office for being racist against white people.
Oh, I know white people who would actually agree with that though. So it's just, it's so hard to hear.
My white father was called to the principal's office. And do you know what his defense of me was?
What did he say?
How can she be racist? She's practically white. Look at her. And I was just like, Asian.
Not the defense he thought it was.
Like, thank you, Father. You are the paragon of my defense.
That's it's, first of all, I don't think you can be racist against white people. And secondly, I mean, I think the argument would be, would you need to go to the principal's office for that? Was that punishment the right thing to do based on the crime? Crime with quotation marks.
And I can guarantee you, in a junior year theater class, kids were projecting much worse things. Can guarantee you they were saying much worse things than me just simply declaring fact.
And on an important day, I think, to say it. I also did not know Columbus Day. I didn't know there was an Indigenous Persons Day until, I mean, I was maybe in college or later.
I feel like that was something that came about once they were like, oh, you know, Columbus was like, you know, a genocidal rapist.
Mm-hmm. Probably shouldn't celebrate this day.
Maybe
probably a bad idea.
Does the 2 Columbia alumni?
One problem at a time.
We're doing great, people. We're doing great.
It's certainly one of the things I thought that was really interesting in this chapter that Mikki Kendall talks about is a lot of the kids, I don't know where she got that information from, but she mentioned that a lot of kids, their worst school memory has to do with teachers and not students. And I was like, that's interesting. And of course, I started to think about all of like the bad experiences I had as a kid with teachers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you also wonder, why do these people want to be teachers? Like, no offense to like teachers or generalizing anything, but I knew some pretty mean people that ended up as teachers.
Yeah, I think that was an important point Mikki Kendall brought out. Teachers can be bullies too. I was actually talking to my mom about that because she had some trouble specifically with teachers when my brother was in middle school, and how teachers can be antagonizing and they can be mean. And I like Mikki Kendall's point, they can be bullies, especially when you're thinking about the need for obedience as opposed to education. I think we definitely have to talk about conditions though, because they are underpaid and the classrooms are super crowded, which certainly doesn't help.
You have that. You have developing minds. I don't know what teachers learn whenever they're going through their teaching certification. I don't know if they do developmental psychology. I feel like it would be very helpful. But then you have cases of these teachers. I don't know if you saw that one. It was a dude that got caught on the school like cameras. He choked a kid and smacked him on the head.
Wow.
Like, there's just definitely something going on with also how teachers are pressured into certain ideals and roles too. I don't feel like teachers would be as horrifying to people if there weren't certain expectations from school administrators, from, I don't know. I also feel like putting police presence in schools freaks the teachers out a little bit too. It gives them a stick. It gives them a stick to threaten students with.
Yeah, we definitely learned from Mikki that schools with security officers or police officers are more likely to have a record, even if it's a nonviolent offense.
And at the same time, if you were to take cops out of schools and focus more on restorative justice, like whenever I first heard about restorative justice in the education system and I learned about how amazing it was, my first thought was no one wants to take the time to invest in it. They'd rather invest tens of thousands of dollars in cops in school rather than teaching students deep breathing.
Yes. It just seems a little, my assumption is it just seems a little hard and I don't know how they would do. I think restorative justice is certainly something that we should look into and something that should be incorporated more. Practically it being implemented, I'm curious how that would work though, considering like it would have to be implemented. How would you do that? How would you train teachers? How would you completely overhaul an education system that's been in place for so long?
That's the thing. We've been divesting in education for decades at this point. We've been divesting in community resources. We've been divesting in like public health. Like this whole system is kind of screwed. And this is just one aspect of it. It's like American society is, okay, pick an animal. Let's say a bird.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks, Christian Cooper. Let's say a bird. Say education is the beak, and the health system is the wing. And then like community services and social services are the other wing. You can't function. The bird's gonna die if one of those elements is not working on the bird.
Okay. That was a good visualization.
We've chopped off both wings and the beak at this point. That thing is dead.
Yeah, I thought Mikki Kendall, maybe throughout this chapter and definitely housing, brought up a point that you brought up a while ago, where it's like we have these social services, but we're not actually investing in them. Like you said, we're divesting in them. We're taking money out of them. And so like they can't even work to the extent in which they'll work because they don't even in any way have the investment that they deserve.
I just thought about another fun analogy. Say like society is a computer and we invest in the nicest keyboard, the nicest screen ever, but we spend nothing on software. That thing's not going to work.
No. It's all connected, certainly. And right now, none of it's working.
None of it is working. From the top of our like voting system to the bottom of like, what is something that's where I don't know. I was about to say maybe like our garbage and disposal systems, but that's not even working. We're killing the earth.
Mm-mm. We just need, like, overall, education is a really good example. We just need a U-Haul of everything. It all needs to be uprooted. And practically, how does that work? But it has to work because none of us are okay.
We're all trying to fix an old station wagon with duct tape. We can't get a new station wagon. This is the only station wagon we have.
Yes.
Ah!
So education.
I feel like it's the root of half of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think if we actually learned in school, not only like English and math and real history, I feel like if we learned social skills and if we learned like tactile things and that we were ready to work, and if we learned just like how to do our taxes, and if we were prepared for life through school, I think so many things would be different.
If we learned even soft skills like teamwork, voting rights, like how to live in a better democratic society. Like, can you imagine how many a-holes wouldn't have graduated out of schools? I graduated with a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So if they would have learned maybe basic human empathy, fine.
We would be a better society. I know one of the arguments for critical race theory being taught is it creates better citizens across the board.
It does.
And better people.
And instead we're getting replacement theory.
Oh my. One uplifts a generation and a population, and one is a myth that actually causes a lot of harm.
I don't understand how like so many people have fallen for it, because personally speaking, I was brought to this country against my will. I'm replacing no one.
Wow, did not know that's where you were going.
It's been a week.
So I'm just gonna take that and move to housing.
Yeah, I don't know how we even transition from that, but I think we ranted so much about education. Like, is there anything else to be said?
I don't think so, because the consensus is we just need a uplift of the system. We need a new system. So what else can be said?
I think a big part of it is funding, and the fact that property taxes fund local school districts, and then property taxes and home buying systems in this country is racist, which is a good transition into housing.
Wow, look at you. You did it. For those listening, Hannah has a very sly smile.
So housing.
Did anything stand out to you in this chapter?
I love the sentence, "The housing crisis is not accidental."
Ooh, yes.
It is a direct result of a series of decisions made in many cases by people who are well aware that marginalized people will bear the consequences of those decisions. So right now, as of 2022, rent in New York City has been on the rise from as low as 40%, and by as low as 40%, to as much as 200% increases in rent.
And it was already so expensive.
It is a housing crisis. It is a manufactured crisis. And the driving force behind said crisis is capitalism, because people are not being granted affordable housing. And it is, once again, a pay to play situation. If you can't pay, you're basically screwed.
Yeah, especially in a country, and I know New York certainly had this problem, but as a country where homelessness and poverty is criminalized, it's certainly a problem.
We have more empty houses than we have a homeless population. Wow. I read that statistic the other week and I was just like, gosh, I hate developers.
I know we have tons of developments coming our way. Like currently, it's like, where is all this space? But it's certainly, I mean, people pay ridiculous amount for apartments here in South Carolina. So I can only imagine New York, California, Florida. Oof.
Not only that, it is the fact that wage has been staggering. There has not been an increase to federal minimum wage since like the 90s. And the cost of living has probably quadrupled. Put two and two together, and the fact that it was easier. I also saw a statistic the other day that said it was easier to get a loan for a house in 1932 than it was here. So was during 2022. So it was easier during the Great Depression because the average cost of housing was like 30% of household income. Now it's closer to 50.
Wow. And that's a direct link to, I mean, and Mikki Kendall definitely talks about it. That's a direct link to poverty, like housing inequality and inability to get affordable housing directly leads to homelessness and poverty.
Yep. People blame homelessness and people experiencing homelessness. They blame it as a mental health crisis. But do you know what causes a lot of mental health crises? Homelessness. That's a large shelter is, I'm sorry if anyone disagrees with me, but shelter is a human right.
Yes. It's one of the basic of Maslow's hierarchy. It's, I mean, why would you disagree? Housing is a human right. It most certainly is.
When people say that housing is a privilege that you have to work for, I would just be like, why the hell am I alive? This is exhausting. If I have to continuously work for housing, work for healthcare, if I have to pay to play, pay to be alive, this is exhausting. I'm surprised that there isn't a deeper mental health crisis.
Yes. 50% of your check. I mean, that's a lot of money. And then think about all the, just like you just mentioned, all the other things you have to buy. If you have kids and you have childcare, which is also crazy expensive, you need food, right? Like you need probably transportation depending on where you live. You can't afford to spend half of your money on a house.
And then whenever people mostly picture how houseless individuals, they picture, who do they picture? Who do you picture?
Demographically, I usually picture. I'm trying to think. Okay, I was just watching Everybody Hates Chris, so that definitely is a character in my mind. Actually, I'll use that. Everybody Hates Chris. There's this character. I think his name is Kilmuth, and he black man, gray hair, hat, like torn clothing. That's usually what I picture.
So I used to do I don't know how accurate this is now, but whenever I was in college, I volunteered for a program called the Poverty Simulation, where they would spend a weekend really digging into what it means to live beneath the poverty line in the United States. And one of the statistics we would talk about is houselessness mostly affects women and children.
That is certainly not who I think about.
Nope. And statistically speaking, someone is considered a homeless or a houseless individual if they do not have a I think it's like if they don't have their name on a piece of paper, like slash like they don't have ownership of wherever they are staying, or like temporary ownership or whatever. So couch surfing is a form of homelessness. So a lot of teenagers, a lot of LGBTQIA youth experience houselessness. There's a lot of it's a hidden population. It's very hard to track, and it's very hard to like work with because of all the extenuating circumstances and extra needs that people experiencing houselessness have. But the big one being houselessness.
Right. Well, Mikki Kendall definitely talks about how in a society that values, we say we value like women and families, and we protect people, the rising cost of homes affects women who are trying to gain their independence. It actually it's a direct driver into staying in toxic and abusive relationships because you just can't afford to be independent.
Yep.
So again, housing is a right.
Housing is a right. We talk about bringing the feminist aspect onto it whenever we talk about poverty affecting women more likely. The wage gap, very basic things. The wage gap and the gap for everything else. The pink tax, the how expensive it is to be in a female body. Literally.
It's Mikki Kendall has this quote that literally took my breath away. There's a financial penalty for presenting as feminine. If you have the book, that is page 206, highlight that, because that literally like goosebumps. It is so true, and it's so devastating to me that that's a universal truth.
While there are other countries that are definitely doing more to close that gap. There is more paid maternal leave, more paid paternal leave. There are less stringent gender roles in certain societies. Women are more respected. There is no pink tax. There is Spain just said that it will allow 3 days a month for female employees to be able to take care of their menstrual health.
That would be so nice.
Can you imagine a dude bleeding out for 3 to 7 days and just be expected to like go and hang out and like do their thing?
Just keep on and start a business and be productive. It's certainly, yeah. I remember I was listening to Michelle Obama's podcast, and she was specifically talking about women going through menopause. So she was saying like the work culture that we have is not in any way women friendly. She's like talking about how, you know, with the suits and women who or people who go through menopause, talking like, you know, the heat attacks. That's not the way it's said. Hot flashes, yes. And like oh my gosh, just being in a meeting in a suit, going through a hot flash, nothing about it really allows. And I mean, that's like capitalism. None of it allows for people to be.
Think about the modern workforce. Women entered the modern workforce to cover for the men who went off to war. Well, then the men came back, took all their jobs back, said women should be at home. And then the women said, F you, I want my independence. And then that's where we're still in this fight now. We're still fighting for against gender discrimination, sexual harassment. We have so many more obstacles whenever it comes to the workforce, and that ties directly into our ability to hold independent housing.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. The reason we're fighting all these battles because we were never meant to be in the workforce in the beginning. And instead of being welcoming and saying, wow, this is such an obstacle. Let's work towards dismantling this. It's just reinforced, unfortunately, in our society.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Mhm.
And as women, we have to deal with this so much. As women of color, we have to even deal with it more.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. I know we've mentioned things like the Crown Act so many times. We have mentioned like workplace discrimination whenever it comes to breastfeeding in the workplace. It like there I can just rattle off so many obstacles whenever and barriers that it comes to whenever it comes to women in the workforce. And then having that directly tied into so much like housing and healthcare. We're screwed.
Yeah. I was seriously in the doctor's office. Was I in the doctor's office? And I was like writing down my insurance information. I was like, it's just so messed up that if I didn't have a job, I couldn't afford that visit. Why does our employment determine if we could see a doctor?
I have a job and I still had to pay money to go see my doctor.
It's again, it's just a whole upheaval of a system. None of it is working. And if we keep investing in this system that needs to change, then there are always going to be problems, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Oh my gosh. And like the fact that we're talking about the wage gap, we're talking about wage inequality, the gap between the mega rich and the mega poor is so wide right now. We have billionaires going to space for funsies. They could have solved the housing crisis with maybe 3% of their wealth.
If only they did their part. There's such a disparity between the rich and the poor right now, and it's certainly getting bigger because of inflation, because of the increasing cost and everything. And if only everyone did their thing, if everyone played their part, we'd be looking at a different society.
Yeah. That's where we are right now.
Oof.
Yep.
So call your senators.
Call your senators.
Write emails. Get involved. Vote, please. I know there are a lot of primaries coming up. We've got one on the 14th.
Yep.
June. So
was watching and checking out all of the primaries last Tuesday when the news of the Uvalde shooting happened, and then everything just switched to that. So I'm like sitting there going like, it just doesn't stop.
It does not stop. That was one thing I was thinking about specifically after Buffalo. I was like, how am I supposed to like live tomorrow? How am I supposed to just like keep going?
I fully dissociated for an entire day, and I'm grateful that I have a job that allows me that kind of freedom to kind of dissociate whenever I need to. Because like life is freaking hard right now.
It's very difficult. Yes.
Yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. So being able to just sit in that is, yeah, I agree, quite a privilege. I also work from home, so I was able, I just cope with making pasta. So I just did something different. But to be able to do that, to not be in a work environment, I mean, oof.
Yeah. Like I literally was able to just like scream into a pillow last week for a little bit. That was nice. So do you have any closing remarks on housing justice, on education justice? It has to have the word justice after it now, because without it, we're stuck in the same systems that we've been dealing with for decades, and we're all going to freaking it's all going to just explode one day. And I'm not going to be there for it. I'm just going to explode with it.
I feel it certainly feels like it's building. Are there any races? Wait, do you guys have a primary coming up?
That's probably good. I should probably check my voter registration.
Yes, check Hannah, yes. And then everybody else who's listening, check your voter registration status.
I know I am New York elections 2022. Oh my gosh. This is exhausting. Covered in Ballotpedia and Senate, House, Governor, other state executives, state Senate, state assembly, special legislative, school boards, municipal government ballot measures. I do know who I am voting for my local neighborhood representative, because honestly, Carolyn Maloney is really annoying me. So I'm voting for Patel. They did phone bank me the other day, and I was like, I'm already voting for him.
Yeah, we've got some elections coming up, some close.
Yeah, and even if you voting is the bare minimum. I also went and signed up to volunteer for Beto O'Rourke the other day.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Are you volunteering? Are you doing food bank?
So I have been added to the official Slack channel of Beto O'Rourke.
Okay.
So official. I'm on a wait list to volunteer for him.
I remember he came here when he was running for the Democratic nomination. I'm a fan. I was having a conversation with one of my other fellow Texan friends, and she was just like, I'm a simp for Beto. Okay. I know we're not supposed to be doing that for politicians, but honestly, so after the press conference where he confronted Greg Abbott and Ted Cruz because those mofos are just evil and soulless gremlins. I'm not going to disagree with any of that.
That take NRA money and don't care if we live or die. I don't know where I was going with that. I was just
you were talking about after that event.
Oh, after that event, he got so many more people signing up to donate money and stuff, because I was just like, he's angry and he's representing what so many of us are feeling right now. As a former Texan, I'm sitting there screaming at the screen all of the time because I still have family and friends who have to live there. Like, I was lucky enough that I was able to move to a state where I had more rights, where my views are valued. But I still have plenty of family and friends back home in Texas. And I still say back home because I am originally Texan. Unfortunately, and originally a Texan. And they have to deal with this.
Yes. I remember in the last election, it got close to being not solid red state. Like, there was certainly some competition there. So, or I forget the terminology for it, but there's certainly hope that there'll be more of a battleground now and in the future.
I saw where someone, I forgot who it was, I think it was a grassroots organizer in Texas. They tweeted, I've been following a lot of stuff on Twitter before, Elon Musk buys it. I saw that one of the local grassroots organizers says that Texas is not a Republican state. Texas is a repressed state, a repressed and oppressed state. If you look at my home district's voting map, it's gerrymandered like hell.
Okay.
Everyone go and Google what gerrymandered means, because I also had to Google that maybe 2 years ago and I was shook.
Yeah.
And it's freaking legal, people.
Yeah. They do it within the law. That's like, so yes, please check your voter registration. If you have local elections, send them to us, because I would love to keep my eye on some good elections. I am in this now.
like you like they do it within the law. The people that create the laws do it within the laws that they create, and they continue to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Drives me
Legally.
nuts.
But I like Beto, so fingers crossed, certainly, and would love to support his campaign. I'm glad you're on the waiting list to be a part, to be a volunteer.
There is a waiting list to be a volunteer. Exactly. That's how great it's going for him. And honestly, I would consider moving back to Texas just to vote in the next election cycle, but then I won't do that because that would literally drive me crazy.
Mm-hmm. I think you're in a good spot, New York.
I think so too. I can lobby from here.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, well, thank you for making me feel better about the world, and that there is hope in organizing. There's hope in grassroots. There is hope in making waves, making a splash. I did just use our School of Social Work's stupid freaking logo. It's ingrained and imprinted in my brain. I hate it.
You use that like seamlessly too. So we're doing fantastic, in case you were curious.
We're also products of the machine. So don't take everything we say as absolute truth. We're also products of the machine. We're just trying our hardest.
Oh, wow. What a fantastic ending note.
Oh, okay. I'm going to stop recording. Bye.